Today's title is Unknown Territory. Chapter 1. Hundreds of years ago, the Vikings lived in Northern Europe. This time in history is called the Viking Age. The area where they lived was cold, mountainous, and not very flat, so they couldn't grow much food. This might be why the Vikings were always looking for new lands to live on. During this time, there was a town called Asklor. A young man named Thorik lived there. He was just over 20 years old. Thorik was strong, tall, and had good looks. He had long brown hair, a big nose, a wide mouth, and strong arms and legs. One afternoon, Thorik came back from hunting. The town of Asklor was busy with people, and the sun was shining, although it was a bit cold. As he walked home, Thorik saw a well-known explorer named Niels. Niels often left Asklor to explore new lands and find places to grow food. Thorik waved at Niels and called out, "Hello!" "Thorik," Niels replied. "Niels, are you still in town?" Thorik asked. "Yes, but only for 2 more nights," Niels answered. "And where are you going after that?" Thorik asked. "I'm not sure," said Niels. "Chief Eskil says it's very far away." Thorik had a lot of respect for Chief Eskil. Eskil was a big man with the longest hair Thorik had ever seen. He had large muscles and a deep, serious voice. Eskil was strict and had many rules, but most people thought he was a good leader. "Does Chief Eskil have new plans?" Thorik asked with interest. "Yes, but he hasn't told us much yet. He just said we need to go farther away," Niels replied. Chief Eskil often sent out groups to explore outside the town. Asklor was small, surrounded by mountains, and near a small lake with a river that flowed to the sea. In summer, there was enough food, but in winter, it was scarce because the animals and plants disappeared. Last winter, people had died from hunger, so Chief Eskil knew they needed to find new lands soon. "That's good news," Thorik said. "I don't want to face a food shortage this winter." "Me neither," Niels agreed. "My family needs to eat better. We can't live on just meat all the time." Thorik had never met Niels' family, but he knew Niels' father, who was a famous explorer in the village. "Niels, I have to go," Thorik said. "I need to clean the animals I just hunted. My family wants to sell the meat." "All right, take care," Niels replied. Thorik returned home and spoke with his parents and sister. His family were farmers. They had a small piece of land where they grew crops and raised animals. They kept the female animals and sold the males. They also sold the meat from Thorik's hunting, which helped them earn money, but it was never enough. That night, Thorik couldn't sleep because he had too much on his mind. He wondered where Chief Eskil was planning to go and what the new expedition was about. 2 days later, Thorik went hunting again, but it was getting harder to find animals as winter approached. When he came back, Thorik saw Niels again. Niels was walking quickly and called out, "Thorik, hurry!" "What's going on, Niels?" Thorik asked. "Chief Eskil has called a meeting. The whole town must be there," Niels said urgently. "Is he going to tell us his plans?" Thorik asked. "Most likely, yes. Take that meat home and come quickly." Niels replied. Thorik hurried home with the meat and then rushed to the great hall. The Great Hall was a large wooden building with walls covered in pictures of Viking gods. It was where Chief Eskil lived with his wife, 4 children, and all the people who worked for him and the town. Meetings were often held in the Great Hall. Chief Eskil would gather everyone together to share important news. This time, they knew they were about to hear something significant. Chapter 2. The meeting turned out to be just what Thorek had hoped for. Chief Eskil discussed his plans for the next expedition. Eskil wanted to travel much farther than before, going beyond the mountains, past the lake, and taking the river all the way to the sea. He planned to sail west as far as they could go to find new land. The people of Asklor, including Thorek and Niels, were surprised by the plan, but they all agreed to it. They began preparing for the journey by building ships and organizing supplies. A month went by slowly. It was almost winter, and the people of Asklor knew they needed more food to avoid shortages. They hoped this would be the last winter where they would go hungry. Niels was in charge of building the ships, using wood from trees near the river. Chief Eskil often visited the site to check on the progress. "Tell me, Niels," Eskil asked, "when can we set sail? I see some ships are already on the river." Then he added seriously, "We need to leave soon." "I'm not sure, Chief. Maybe in a week or even sooner," Niels replied. "A week? Well done," said Eskil. "Yes, the wood is strong, the materials are good, and our builders are very skilled," Niels reported. That night, Chief Eskil gave another talk in the Great Hall. This time, they had to decide who would go on the ships. There was only room for 75 men, so they asked for volunteers. Most of the men who raised their hands were warriors, trained and ready for the journey. Thorek also wanted to go, even though he wasn't a warrior. He was a skilled hunter, and he knew that finding food would be important. He raised his hand and said, "Chief, you don't know what kind of food we'll find. You need hunters, and I can hunt anything, anywhere." Chief Eskil looked at Thorek and agreed. "All right, come with us." From that moment on, Thorek couldn't wait for the expedition to begin. When the day finally came, Chief Eskil, Niels, Thorek, and the other Vikings prepared to sail. They prayed to the gods for help, and their wives and families said goodbye. Eskil put his wife in charge while he was gone. She also spoke to the men, giving them encouragement for the long journey ahead. The 3 ships set off, heading west. Everything was in good condition, and the men were in high spirits. The first few weeks went by without any problems. Several weeks later, the ships were still making progress, but they had not yet seen any land, only water. There were no birds in the sky, which meant land was not close by. Some of the Vikings started to doubt Chief Eskil. One man asked, "Chief Eskil, are you sure there's land in the west?" "I'm certain," Eskil replied. "But what if we don't find it?" the man asked. Eskil became angry. "We will not fail," he shouted. "There is land in the west. Someone told me they saw it with their own eyes. Do you understand? Now, get out of my sight." Eskil didn't like being questioned, but he knew the men didn't share his strong beliefs. For them, it wasn't so clear. So he decided to speak to everyone on the ship. "There is land in the west," Eskil shouted. "I can prove it." He held up a small piece of cloth with strange images on it. "Someone made this. You must believe me. I know there is something out there." The Vikings stayed quiet and kept rowing, but they all wondered who had told Chief Eskil about the land in the west. Later that day, it suddenly started to rain, and the winds grew stronger. The sea became rough, and soon a fierce storm hit the ships. The Vikings struggled to keep the 3 ships together. Finally, the storm passed, and Chief Eskil looked at the sky. He checked their position and realized that the storm had changed their course. He couldn't be sure where they were and didn't want to tell the men. He could only hope they were still heading in the right direction. Days later, Thorek woke up early and looked at the sky. Suddenly, he saw something. At first, he couldn't believe it, but then he looked again and saw that it was real. Thorek ran to wake Niels. "Niels, Niels, wake up," he shouted. "What's going on?" Niels asked, still half asleep. "There are birds," Thorek said excitedly. "What?" Niels asked. "There are birds in the sky. That means land is nearby," Thorek replied. His eyes flew open. He looked up and saw the birds far to the west. "So it's true," he exclaimed. Niels quickly got up to report to Chief Eskil, with Thorek following him. "Chief Eskil, wake up," Niels shouted. Chief Eskil woke up quickly. "Niels." "Thorek, what's happening?" he asked. "There are birds in the sky," Niels said. "There's land." Thorek added. Chief Eskil stood up and shouted to the men on the ships. "Row! Come on! Wake up, everyone! There is land nearby." Row. The men rowed hard, and soon they saw land. Chief Eskil ordered the ships to stop at a nearby beach. The beach was long, with many trees and mountains nearby. It was a beautiful sight. The Vikings got off their ships, and Chief Eskil gathered the men. He divided them into small groups and gave orders. To one group, he said, "Gather sticks. We need to start a fire." Then he turned to Thorek and Niels. "We don't have many supplies left. We won't survive long unless we hunt. Go and find some animals." Thorek and Niels went hunting, but everything felt different. The trees, the sounds, and even the animals were unfamiliar. But the men were hungry, so they killed and ate the strange animals. The meat tasted different, but it wasn't bad. That night, Chief Eskil spoke to the men again. "We have food now, and we're thankful for that," he said. "But now we need to explore this place. We need to find out if we can grow crops here. If we can farm this land, more Vikings will come." One of the men asked, "How do we know where we are?" "Some of us think the storm took us off course." Chief Eskil didn't speak for a few minutes. Finally, he said nothing about it. Instead, he told the men, "We must explore this place. We'll start tomorrow at sunrise." Chapter 3. The men woke up early with the sun. They ate some of the food they had left from their journey, along with the meat they had hunted. Thorek quickly went to speak with Chief Eskil after finishing his meal. "Hello, Chief." Thorik greeted him. "Hello, Thorik. Do you need something?" Eskil asked. "I need to talk to you," Thorik said. "Go ahead," replied the chief. Thorik had a question on his mind. At the start of our journey, the men had doubts. They asked a lot of questions because they weren't sure if there was any land in the west. But you were a strong leader, and now we've safely arrived here. "Yes. What are you trying to say, Thorik?" Eskil asked. "The man who told you about this land, the one who gave you the proof, who was he?" Thorik asked. "You mean the man who told me these lands existed?" Eskil clarified. "Yes, exactly," Thorik confirmed. Eskil looked around carefully. "What's wrong?" Thorik asked. "Where's Niels?" Eskil inquired. "I think he's eating," Thorik replied. "Oh, I see. The man who told me about this place was Niels' father," Eskil revealed. "Niels' father?" Thorik repeated, surprised. Thorik was shocked. His father was the mysterious man? But Niels' father had died. Thorik didn't understand. "I thought Niels' father died on a previous expedition, and that expedition was heading east." "He died in a fall in the mountains," Thorik explained. "No, that was a lie. I actually sent them westwards. It was a secret mission." "No one knew," Eskil confessed. "You sent him to this land? Alone?" Thorik asked. "No. I sent him west with 13 other men. 2 of them died on the way, and 8 died here. Niels' father and 2 others managed to return, but they died shortly after from exhaustion. We didn't have the resources to save them. Before Niels' father passed away, he told me about this land and gave me this," Eskil said, showing Thorik a piece of cloth with strange images on it. Thorik had never seen anything like it before. He realized that Eskil had some proof now, but what about before? "How did you know? Why did you send those men west?" "You said you thought there was only sea," Thorik questioned. "I had a feeling," Eskil admitted. "A feeling?" Thorik was shocked. "Niels' father died because you had a feeling? Because you took a risk?" Thorik warned Eskil, "If Niels finds out, he'll never forgive you." Eskil grabbed Thorik's arm. "You can't tell Niels. He's our best explorer, almost as good as his father. He can't be distracted now." "We need him," Eskil said seriously. "Understood," Thorik agreed. "Now, go back to the men. Don't speak of this again," Eskil ordered. Later, the men gathered their weapons and crossed the beach into the woods. They were ready for anything. Niels led the group. After walking for hours, they saw something below a hill. It was a small village. Niels signaled the group to stop immediately. Niels, Eskil, and Thorik observed the village. The houses looked different, and the people, men, women, and children, had darker skin and wore strange clothes. They spoke a language the Vikings didn't understand. Chief Eskil approached the village first, and the rest followed. Some villagers were scared and ran to their houses. Eskil tried to calm them down. "We won't hurt you," he said in a gentle voice, repeating the words and using simple gestures. After a while, the village chief came out and offered Eskil a drink. Eskil looked at it curiously. The village chief then said, "Water." in the Viking language. Eskil was surprised the man knew their language. Eskil and the village chief talked for several hours. The chief explained that he had learned the Viking language from the first expedition. He also told Eskil that the local people had tried to help the previous Vikings, but they didn't accept the help and ended up dying, some from animal attacks, others from eating the wrong foods or from diseases. After talking with the village chief, Eskil gathered his men. "Gentlemen, I've learned a lot today. Most importantly, there were Vikings here before us. They didn't listen to the local people and died because of it," Eskil said seriously. He continued, "The village chief told me that some of those Vikings tried to return home, but they died from exhaustion after the journey. Those were the men who told me about this land." The men realized that's how Eskil knew about the lands in the West. Eskil then addressed the men quietly. "We have a decision to make. We don't know where we are. The storm took us too far off course." The Vikings were silent for a few minutes. Eskil continued, "We need to decide. Do we stay here and learn to live in this land with the help of these people, or do we try to return home and risk exhaustion and death?" Eskil looked at the villagers. "These are good people. They know the land well. They can farm and hunt. They've asked us to stay. For me, the choice is clear. I will stay." One of the men shouted, "So we're just going to leave our families and never see them again? We can't do that." Another man added, "Look at our ships. They're badly damaged from the storm. We can't return home safely." "I vote we stay." Eskil looked at his men. "Both of you may be right. That's why I can't offer any advice. Each of you must make your own decision. If you want to leave, you're free to go. If you choose to stay, you're welcome. But from this point on, I'm no longer your chief. I'm just a man." In the following days, two groups formed. One group decided to stay and start a new Viking society in this new land. The other group decided to take the least damaged ships and try to return home. A month later, the second group left. As they sailed away, Eskil spoke to Niels. "Things didn't go as planned." "No, they didn't," Niels replied, looking at his former leader. "You wanted to help our town. Things didn't turn out as expected, but this is a good place. We can live here." "Yes," Thorek agreed. "It's interesting to be in a new place with new things. And we can keep exploring," Niels added. "We'll find new and exciting challenges. Don't worry, we'll be happy." He then smiled and said, "Chief." The men laughed, ready for their next adventure, exploring a new world that would later be known as North America. When you want to learn English, read, listen, and speak for 1 hour every day. Thank you so much for watching until the end.